Counsel, you want to talk to your client for a moment
Yes,
to make
yes.
sure we can make it through the hearing?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. We ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
This is case PD 04242015. The court has before it the matter of Latonya and an affidavit that was filed in regard to Ohio Revised Chapter 5122. Counsel, please identify yourself, beginning with the prosecutor.
Dorothea Allen for the board.
Thank you.
Quentin Mondin representing Latonya.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mondin. Are there any stipulations in regard to the medical records?
Yes, Your Honor, we would ask to have the respondent's medical records entered.
All right, are there any objections, Mr. Mondin?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, let the record reflect then that the medical records will be entered without objection. And Mr. Allen, you can call your first witness.
Thank you. The state calls Dr. Mark Munoz.
Dr. Munoz,
Munoz.
if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to this court will be the truth so help you God?
I do.
All right. You can proceed with your questioning. The court also recognizes Dr. Munoz as an expert in his field, so he can testify as to his medical opinions.
Thank you. Dr. Munoz, has there been a hold sign and an affidavit filed with the court based on the respondent's refusal to do so voluntarily?
Yes, Latonya was brought into the emergency room by the police and on a pink slip and was admitted to the hospital. She refused to sign a voluntary, and in fact, I don't think she had the capacity to voluntarily admit herself to the hospital. And so I did file an affidavit for this hearing.
Okay, and prior to this hospitalization, how many times has the respondent been hospitalized in the past 3 years?
She's been hospitalized 5 times in the last 3 years. Each time she comes to the hospital, we're able to stabilize her. She leaves in relatively stable condition, but quickly discontinues treatment and ends up going through the cycle again, unfortunately.
Okay. Then Dr. Munoz, in your expert opinion, does the respondent pose a threat or is there a substantial risk for harm to others?
Yes, I believe she is. The delusional belief that she holds that her neighbor's daughter is in fact her own daughter who's been kidnapped as a result of a conspiracy with having to do with ISIS in the Middle East really does create a significant danger to the neighbor and to her daughter.
Thank you. Would you please share with us the history of this respondent's compliance?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, she typically leaves the hospital on a long-acting injectable antipsychotic medication. She's chosen to see a private psychiatrist rather than the public mental health agency, and typically doesn't show up for her follow-up appointments, doesn't get her next injection after being stabilized in the hospital, and as I said, keeps going through those cycles.
Okay. And does the respondent have a disorder of thought, mood, or perception?
Yes, she does. She has persistent auditory hallucinations, at times giving her commands to do things that might be at risk to others, and a fairly elaborate delusional system having to do with the threat of ISIS and their conspiracy to kidnap her what she believes to be her daughter.
Yes, sir. Daddy. And doctor, based on your experience and your expertise, please tell us what your diagnosis is for this respondent.
Yeah, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, my diagnosis is schizophrenia.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions of the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mondin, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Doctor, I do believe it would be in her best interest to have the least restrictive means of care. She's very dedicated to continue to see her local provider. So that's my only concern. I think it would be better if she would stay local rather than have court-mandated therapy.
I think right now Latonya is too ill to be released back to the community. I think she needs a period of time in the hospital to stabilize.
But I think it would be better if she attended her local health center, the familiar faces, scenery. I think it would do her a world of good rather than being restricted to an area that she doesn't know.
Yeah, I can only repeat. I think the acuity of her illness right now mandates that she stay in the hospital.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Allen, any follow-up questions for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any witnesses to call, Mr. Mondin?
No witnesses at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Latonya, are you all right for us to just complete the hearing now?
We're fine.
You're fine?
She
All
has
right.
no statements at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, very good. Mr. Allen, would you like to sum up your case, please?
Yes, thank you. Based on the doctor's testimony, the respondent suffers from a mental illness diagnosis of schizophrenia. The respondent poses a threat of substantial risk of harm to others. The respondent has a history of noncompliance. And the respondent is in need of and would benefit from court-ordered inpatient treatment.
All right, thank you.
Therefore, yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Therefore, the board seeks a order of compliance.
Mr. Mondin?
I'd just like to reinforce, I think she would benefit to the least restrictive means of therapy. That's all.
All right, thank you. The court takes under consideration the evidence that's been presented in this case, and that consists of the testimony of the treating psychiatrist, Dr. Munitz. The court makes two findings. The first, under Ohio Revised Code Chapter 5122, is whether or not Latonya is a person with a mental illness. The court heard testimony in this case that Latonya suffers from a disorder of thought and perception. Those disorders grossly impair her judgment and her behavior at this point. That's documented in the medical record that was entered. And that is clear and convincing evidence that Latonya does in fact suffer from the legal definition of a mental illness. The second finding that the court makes in a case of this type is whether or not as a result of that mental illness, Latonya is subject to court order. Hundreds of people have mental illnesses and are not subject to court order, but in this particular case, the court finds that the testimony of Dr. Munitz that Latonya represents a substantial risk of physical harm to others, specifically her neighbor's daughter, rises to the level of clear and convincing evidence that allows the court to find that Latonya is in fact someone who should be subject to court order. In this case, the court orders that Latonya receive inpatient treatment at the hospital in which she's currently a patient. She'll remain in the hospital until after this hearing for psychiatric treatment, and then she'll be discharged upon the order of her treating psychiatrist. She'll be discharged back into the community. There'll be no further probate court involvement at that time. We're adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that Latonya has a serious mental illness, a diagnosis of schizophrenia. You've heard the magistrate say that she will be under the jurisdiction of the court for the remainder of the time she's in the hospital and will be released when her psychiatrist in the hospital feels that she is able to go home. You may have also caught that there will be no follow-up mandated interaction with her and the community mental health system after she is released. The attorney for her suggested that she continue to have interactions with her own doctors. So what happened next? After 5 days, she was released from the hospital. She didn't show up at her scheduled appointments with her therapist. A few weeks later, same thing again, she didn't show up. 2 months later, you can guess what happened. Latonya sees her neighbor and the neighbor's little 5-year-old girl in the parking lot. She tries to grab the little 5-year-old girl and take her into Latonya's apartment. The police are called. She is arrested for attempted kidnapping, and she is then sentenced to prison for 2 years. We now are going to take up from what happened there. The magistrate now, in the second skit, second stage, the magistrate makes the same findings as in scenario 1, but of ordering inpatient treatment alone. The magistrate orders Latonya to remain in the hospital, but upon discharge by her treating psychiatrist, she is ordered committed to the mental health board for outpatient treatment. About 2 months after the initial hearing at the hospital, the prosecutor files an application for continued commitment with the probate court. The hearing is scheduled for a few days before the 90th day anniversary of the initial hearing. We now find ourselves in the courtroom, and Latonya's follow-up hearing will proceed.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Your Honor.
This is case number PD 04242015. Counsel, please state your names for the record.
Dewey Allen for the board.
Quentin Mondin representing Latonya.
Hello. Are there any stipulations?
Yes, Your Honor. We ask that the respondent's medical record, a report from the peer support specialist, and also a report from a case manager be entered.
All right. Mr. Mondin, any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right. Let the record reflect then that the medical records are entered, as well as the report from the case manager, as well as the peer support specialist. We also have with us Ms. Spada. Ms. Spada, you're the probate monitor, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Your Honor.
Before I talk to you, I'm going to talk to the probate monitor for a little bit, all right?
Okay.
It's nice to see you this morning. All right, just hang in there with me for a minute, and I'll get to you in a moment.
Yeah.
Ms. Spada, you want to tell me about what services were put in place after we left the hospital and Latonya was discharged?
Well, Latonya has had intake, and she is seeing a psychiatrist. She sees him regularly. She has appointments scheduled. She also has a case manager. However, she does not have a therapist. Her family also has been very cooperative and helpful in seeing that she stays on her medication. Your Honor, I can also say that she is now participating in an ACT team, and that's assertive community treatment. And through this program, she receives peer support and has check-in, and case manager checks in on her regularly to see how she's doing. And Judge, I also would like to recommend that she it might be helpful if she were to visit the local clubhouse.
Oh, that's a good idea. All right, Latonya, you just heard about all the people that are out there helping you. Have you met most of them now?
Yeah.
You have? The members of the ACT team?
Yeah.
And your new psychiatrist?
Yeah.
How are things going?
Good.
You're living back in your house.
Yeah.
And when you see your doctor, is everything going well? Are you letting him know how you're feeling?
Yeah. I mean, everything's good. I mean, I still kind of, I hear these voices, but it's getting better.
These are the same kind of voices that you heard back at the hospital?
Yeah, same voices. They have my daughter. Yeah.
Would that be the little girl that lives next door?
I don't think you have it right, but I think that's yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, well, your next door neighbor has a daughter. I'm aware of that. But I'm not sure that you have a daughter.
No, she's mine. I think she's mine.
Have you talked to the psychiatrist about the fact that you think that your next door neighbor's daughter is yours?
Oh, no, they give me more medicine.
Oh, well, that's a valid concern, but
more medicine.
there might be other alternatives and there might be other medications that can be tried besides the one that you're on right now.
I got enough medicine. I'm doing good.
Well, but aren't the voices uncomfortable?
I guess they are. Yeah, they bother me sometimes.
Yeah, they are. They've got to be bothersome.
Yeah,
You don't have to suffer with the voices. That's the whole point of what the probate system is about.
Yeah.
Let me explain a little bit about why you're here today and what's going to happen in the future.
Okay.
You haven't done anything wrong. This is not a
No,
criminal
no,
court.
no.
It doesn't have anything to do with
No.
doing things wrong. But it is a court that's going to try to put enough services and help in place so that you can get your feet back on the ground, get your life back, and not be involved with the criminal court. That's
No.
the whole point of
No.
what we're trying to do here.
Yes, yes,
So you have a lot of people to help. You have a
Yes.
case manager.
yes.
You have the ACT team that you
Yes.
can call, all
Yes.
right? You have a new psychiatrist.
Yes.
We'll talk about a therapist in a minute. That might be a good idea. If you continue to have issues and problems about your next door neighbor and her daughter, that could put you in jeopardy of maybe doing something that might land you in jail, and we don't want to
I'll
see
be
that
good.
happen.
I'll be good. I don't hurt anyone.
Well, that's, you know, we know that you're a good person. There's no question about that. It's just that if you listen to the voices and act on what they say to you, that could put you in peril for maybe being in jail, maybe ending up in jail. So the only way that you're going to be able to really get a handle on the voices is by working with your doctor and discussing the medication. If the doctor doesn't know you're still hearing voices, he can't help you to try to alleviate them. And the point of all of this is to get rid of the voices if possible. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Do you know what your diagnosis is?
Schizophrenia.
And do you understand what schizophrenia is?
Something wrong with me.
Well, there's something wrong, and it's not your fault, but there's something wrong with your mind, your thoughts.
I think good.
Well, that in some cases, but in other cases, what is really reality out
Like
in...
the show?
Well, not a reality show exactly. Reality in terms of what your eyes see and what your
I see.
ears hear, and all of that information comes into your brain and it tells you what your reality is. Like we're sitting in a courtroom right now, but when you go outside, the sky is going to be blue and it's going to be a pretty day today. The voices aren't reality. They're not real. They're created, they're manufactured by all the biochemical processes that we have going on, and they're manifested by your brain. It's a lot like if you had the flu and you sneezed.
So I'm sick. I'm sick.
Well, that's
I
it.
got a cold. I need some medicine.
That's it exactly. If you had a cold and you were sneezing, it would not be your fault that you were sneezing. It's part of the cold, right? Well, you have schizophrenia, and the disorders of thought that you have, the voices, it's part of the schizophrenia. But it's treatable. It can be treated with the medication if you tell the doctor you got the voices so he knows, so he can start to try to adjust the medications.
Okay. Okay.
If you were to be able to speak to a therapist, they can help you with separating what's real from what's not real. That's called reality testing. They can work on that a little bit with you. Do you think you might be interested in something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. All right, Ms. Spada, why don't we see if we can add a therapist to the team of people that is part of Latonya's treatment?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. It's important also that you continue to tell either your attorney or Ms. Spada, because you're going to see her more than you're going to see your attorney, whether everything's going well and you like all the people in your treatment team. Because if you encounter, you know, a case manager or something, things, if they're just not going well, don't wait till they get really bad. Make sure you tell Ms. Spada, and then she can make some changes, and she'll report it to me, and we'll talk about it the next time you come into court.
Yeah, yeah,
Does that sound like a plan?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So between now and when I see you again, I'm going to wrap the hearing up here in a minute, and we're going to see each other in 6 months. The important things on your list is, what do you think's number one?
See my doctor. Tell the doctor.
Tell the
About
doctor.
the voices. the
Exactly.
voices.
And
Yeah.
then take the medication that he prescribes, so that when you come
Oh,
back
yes.
in, when you come back in here the next time, we've got something to work with.
Yeah, yeah.
okay? So
Stop
stay on the
voices.
medication.
Take my medicine.
Take the
Take my
medication,
medicine.
right?
Because I got a cold.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. All right, well, thank you for coming today. It was really nice talking to you, and we'll see each other again in 6 months. All right?
Okay.
This court order will expire in 6 months. About 2 weeks prior to the expiration of this court order, there will be another hearing. It will be here at the courthouse. All parties will be notified of that hearing by mail. And the application for continued commitment that was before the court today is obviously granted, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard what happened. This is the second hearing for our individual, and the judge has just ordered that outpatient treatment be administered by the local Adams Board. The Adams Board and the individuals that she's dealing with, the assertive community treatment team, hold weekly meetings. They do everything within their power that they're supposed to do, and things are rolling along quite well. Latonya is encouraged by her visits to her team. She is doing well. She feels safe. The neighbor and her daughter feel safe. You heard that she was also encouraged to visit her local clubhouse. At her local clubhouse, she meets friends and interacts well with them. For many years, there's a good outcome to this situation. Unfortunately, not related to her mental illness, she is diagnosed with a chronic medical condition and dies at age 39. As you know, that happens sometimes. At this time, I'm going to ask our actors to come up here in front, and they're going to take a bow.